I'm Tyler Jones, and on this edition of the Racing Roundtable, I'm going to tell you why I like what I'm seeing from Chase Elliott. He's not the best of the best. He's not a bad driver by any stretch either. He just is who he is at this point.
I'm Dominic Aragon, and I'm going to tell you why not really sold on Chevrolet quite yet.
Welcome in to another edition of the Racing Roundtable. Tyler Jones, Dominic Aragon here with you. Matt Kemp out this week. It is just the two of us. We can make it if we try. We have plenty. Yes, we'll make it till we die. We get plenty to discuss on today's show. The NASCAR Cup Series is off this week, but we are not here on the Racing Roundtable. The show goes on. We will look back at the weekend that was at Martinsville. We will take a look at the top headlines in the sport. Plenty to discuss and talk about as well. All that here in just a matter of moments. Dominic, it is good to see you and make this show happen. There were some obstacles stood in the way, but we are here and we're at it again for another week here on the Racing Roundtable.
As they say, life happens, but we always make it work. The show goes on, as you say. And no truer words could be spoken. I recall a time last year where it was out 2 weeks, and you guys kept it rolling as if nothing had happened and no beat was missed.
Yes. Cough, cough, Kyle Stevens. We'll hold it against him. If you know, you know. But nonetheless, we're gonna have a great time today, no matter what. And Matt had a previous obligation, so we'll let it slide this week because yours truly is going to be out next week. So, hey, we make the Racing Roundtable happen in some way, shape, or form, no matter what, here on the show. Let's begin, Dom, with talking about Chase Elliott getting the win. And, you know, we'll get into our takes and our analysis and all that in just a moment. But just starting with the way that unfolded, Alan Gustafson makes a great call. There was a little luck involved with when the caution came out, but nonetheless, right place, right time for Chase Elliott and Alan Gustafson to take advantage and position themselves to find victory lane there.
That's why you have a championship winning crew chief top that box, making those calls and trying something out of the box when things may not be going your way. What, ninth place, 10th place? That's where he was for most of the race. So you have a call where they were going to try to split the stages in thirds, and then you have some cautions fall your way and muscle past Ross Chastain and hold off Denny Hamlin. I think even Denny Hamlin said in his post-race comments that Chase was just able to control the race a little bit better. Plus, Hamlin might have been battling a loose wheel like he thought at Darlington. So I don't know what ended up coming out of that. But what we know ended up coming out of that was Chase Elliott's 22nd career win, which, Tyler, I think at this point would have thought we would have had more wins out of Chase Elliott when we were looking at how well he was running off the 2020 championship. 5 wins in 2022, goes winless in 23, misses races because of his injury. He's suspended at one point too. And it seems like the stat line just doesn't look the same. But nonetheless, from a historical perspective, he ties a former Hendrick Motorsports driver, Terry Labonte, on the wins list. Good for 38th all time. His next win will tie him for Ricky Rudd, and also another former Hendrick Motorsports driver. But like I said, Tyler, that win total, I would have thought 10 years now into the NASCAR Cup Series, 11 years, he's averaging 2 wins a year. Would have thought it'd been a lot higher.
So that brings up an interesting point. I had a column that I wrote on Sunday on NASCARRoundtable.com about this very topic when it came to Chase Elliott. And expectations for Chase when he entered the NASCAR Cup Series were sky high. He had won a championship in, what was it, the Nationwide Series back then, or was that the Xfinity Series? Whatever.
It was the Nationwide Series.
Nationwide Series. The Grand National Series, as far as I'm concerned. Had that in his bag, was replacing a legend in Jeff Gordon. Dale Earnhardt Jr. retired shortly thereafter that. He inherited a lot of Gordon and Earnhardt fans, as well as fans of his own father, right there. And I think that made the pressure cooker really turn up, that expectations were sky high, that Chase Elliott was going to be the next phenom of this sport. And I would say that it was probably the largest expectations we've seen for a driver since Joey Logano, who was dubbed by Mark Martin as the best thing since sliced bread, had entered the NASCAR Cup Series. And the idea was with Chase that this was a guy that wasn't just going to win races, that wasn't just going to win a championship, but championships plural, that everything was in front of him. And then, like, you go back to his early years in his career, Dom, and Chase, it took him a while to get to victory lane. Hendrick Motorsports was having some issues. They were going through a rough patch. And, he was running up front, but he couldn't finish races. And then finally he broke through. And then in 2020, the COVID year, he had a really good run in the postseason and ended up claiming his first and only championship. And it seemed like at that point, okay, this is the breakout now. This is where more is coming. And then that just never really happened for Chase. And we've seen him be continually consistent. He can run up front, lead a lot of laps. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. You're not talking about a lot of DNFs for Chase Elliott. He's just a good, consistent race car driver. And I think at 30 years old, at this point in his career, 10 years in, I think it's time for people to accept that this is just who Chase Elliott is, that he's not an elite race car driver. He's not in the same plethora of Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, but he's not in the tier below that. He's not like a Bubba Wallace necessarily. I don't think he's as good as Tyler Reddick either. I'd put Tyler Reddick ahead of him. But that's okay. Like Chase Elliott, if you're talking about that second tier, him being there with William Byron, I guess, and maybe Byron's even better than him. But, that's fine as far as I'm concerned. Like this is somebody that I would take in my race car every single day and twice on Sunday. He's not going to create controversy. He's going to lead a lot of laps. He keeps his equipment clean. He doesn't get involved in too many incidents, doesn't have any on-track feuds. This is who Chase Elliott is. And, like the expectations, I think, were a bit unrealistic. And I think that comes naturally with the territory of his last name and everything we mentioned, replacing Jeff Gordon, going to Hendrick, Dale Jr. retiring, becoming the most popular driver. But if this is who Chase is the rest of his career, if he averages 2 or 3 wins a season, if he can run up front, if he can contend for championships, he might not win another championship the rest of his career, and that's still okay for me. I think he has lived up to the mantle, even if he is not in that elite category necessarily.
And he's a Cup champion, like you said, 22 wins. He's halfway to his dad's mark. His dad won 44 times in Cups. He's already halfway there. Wouldn't shock me if those two end up around the same. And of course, as Bill, I'm sure, would tell you, any father is going to want their son to outshine them 10x, tenfold. He'd love for his son to pass him on that wins list. But if you're getting 2 wins a year, you're going to make the playoffs every year, the chase every year, and compete for a top 10 position in points. That's still a pretty good year. I know Chase is a very competitive person, but it does feel, though, Tyler, and curious on your take on this. Is the injury from 2023 and the suspension still something that just looms over years later? Is that just no? That has nothing to do with the Chase Elliott we have seen before that and after that.
I don't think so personally. And I could be wrong on this, but I more so, Dom, go back to this car, this next gen car. Chase, I think, was better suited for the previous car. That's when he won the championship in 2020, was the Gen 7, not this next gen car. I think had we stayed with the previous Gen 7, we might be talking about a different Chase Elliott. I think he had a better feel for that car. I mean, great examples of the road courses. Chase had everything figured out on the road courses in that car, and he hasn't won a road course race since in the next gen car. It's been a different story there. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't got to victory lane there. So, this car is better suited for different drivers. I think Denny Hamlin's been a big beneficiary of the next gen car. Kyle Larson, even his teammate that's won 2 championships, his performance went down from moving over to the next gen car. So that's what I would attribute it more so is that he hasn't gotten comfortable with the next gen like he was the Gen 7 necessarily. And I would point to that more so than I would his suspension and the injury and all that, personally speaking.
Yeah, and you're right. He's never won a road course race in the next gen era where it seemed like he was the SVG of the Gen 6 era. No one could touch Chase Elliott. No one could hold a candle to Chase Elliott on a road course. But he's had some good runs. He's had some strong runs on those style of races. But I will say, though, as maybe as more of a collective, too, as I led on to in the opener, I'm just not convinced right now, Tyler, on where Chevrolet is as an organization. Yes, they did win the race, but Toyota flat out dominated this race on Sunday. Denny Hamlin was in his own zip code for much of the event. And it just doesn't seem like Chevrolet has the raw speed like the Ford camp does or the Toyota camp does right now. I know that's going to come with that new territory with the new body, but we go to Bristol in a couple of weeks. Okay. Bristol, maybe a little more grace. There's a little bit of parity that comes with that, but then we're going to go to more mile and a half. I want to see how this goes at Kansas, at Charlotte. That's going to give us more of, I think, of an identifier of where Chevrolet truly is. What does that notebook look like by the time we get to Kansas, Texas, and the Coke 600?
I agree with you 100% on all of that. But here is the point of optimism I would give to the Chevrolet camp and any Chevy fans out there is I don't think, Dom, it can get any worse than what it did the previous 5 races to start the season for Chevrolet. I don't think it's anywhere but up from here for that team, that camp. And you think about it, let's call it like it is. They stole a win at Martinsville. I know a win's still a win, but let's say what it is. They did not have the best car. Chase did not have the best car in the field, but they still found a way to win. If you can steal a win when you're not performing your best, then eventually, as you get better, there's going to be more wins you steal, and there's going to be more wins you earn. So I would think that even though, yes, you are correct, I would still say they're on an upward trajectory from here.
And I would agree with that point too, because the notebook's going to get thicker. The more races you go to, the more of a sample size you have. Okay, we know it didn't work at Las Vegas. We know it worked and didn't work at Martinsville because Chevrolet just hasn't shown up compared to the other two camps yet. But again, there is some grace I think that should be afforded to that because again, it's a new body. It's what do they call it? The Go Chevrolet because the Camaro is no longer produced. So it's going to be a learning curve. And it doesn't seem like as steep as a learning curve as maybe 2018 was, where it seemed like all the Chevrolet teams were just down and off, especially Hendrick. But a big boost in the arm for Chevrolet to have a win, a big boost for Hendrick. Oh, and to add to the Chase Elliott point, too, this is my understanding. This is the earliest he has ever won in a season, 6 races or
Yes.
7 races into a NASCAR Cup Series season.
Yes, he'd mentioned that in his post race interview. This was the earliest that he's ever won. So I think that's a big deal for him to already mark that off, to have that taken care of in his arsenal. And, one thing I'll say too when it comes to Chase, Dom, I don't think I'm breaking any news by saying this. I think I'm just being honest here. I think he and Kyle Larson don't have the best relationship of sorts. I think there is some envy, there is some jealousy. We've seen Kyle Larson straight up call out the most popular driver voting in the past, saying that he thinks that there's something weird to that Chase keeps winning, and he's like, I have just as many fans as he does, and my fans are just as passionate, about that. And Kyle is the flagship driver of that organization now. It's his team. For Chase Elliott, I do wonder how different would his career be if Kyle Larson had never shown up? Because, you know, put it this way, I'm not saying that they're giving Kyle the best equipment every week, but I think resources do get kind of split up more when the 5 team outperforms the 9 team, as we've seen time and time again. And then you factor in the 24 in the equation with William Byron as well. Like, there's only so many mouths you can feed within that organization. Like, I think that, for Hendrick's sake, it was great that they brought in Kyle Larson, but I don't think that helped Chase Elliott one bit. of them having Kyle Larson in that 5 team there and taking away resources and taking the mantle of sorts. Because before Kyle Larson showed up, that was Chase Elliott's team.
Took the words right out of my mouth. That was going to be the next point to bring up because Johnson was on the way out. Kyle Larson had come in 2021. You could even still argue that the 9 team was the flagship team for Hendrick Motorsports. And Kyle Larson's just shown and shown again how much he can outshine. I feel like we do see Kyle Larson get into some more weird messes on the racetrack.
Yes.
I think the Indianapolis the road course or the incident in Mexico City. There's just some weird, what would appear to be rookie mistakes, it looks like, behind the wheel. And Kyle's no rookie. He's a 2-time champion, but you don't see that out of Chase Elliott. And another point to drive home on this too, Tyler. I love Alan Gustafson's comments post race. I think, I don't know if it was the moderator, maybe a reporter had asked him, but reading through that transcript about like how you shut the noise out or like the outside noise about him being the crew chief, they're not worried about it. They shut all that out. And I really feel too, that more comes from the fan base. I feel like he had said maybe it was more like the media talks about it, but I really feel like it's the fan base that really more so talks about that than the media and then the 9 team. I feel like Alan Gustafson and that 9 team, what they do, 30 teams would be loving to do what Chase Elliott does every year, where you're winning races and you're in constant championship talk. So the bar's always going to be higher at Hendrick Motorsports, no matter who you are. But Alan Gustafson, I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. He's a championship winning crew chief. He revived Jeff Gordon's career at the very end there. He was a step up from Steve Letarte. So they have the resources to do it. It's just a matter of if they can get it done consistently speaking, as far as that goes. Meanwhile, let's talk Denny Hamlin. He comes in second in this race. Denny had the best car, the team to beat, but Chase Elliott and Alan Gustafson beat them on strategy and ultimately get the job done. For Denny, I think it sucks because you're saying to yourself, this is one that got away. This is one we should have won. But you still led a lot of laps, picked up a ton of points, and you finished second. I don't think you can be too mad about it because you didn't do anything wrong. Chase and company just did something more right than what you did.
And there were factors out of your control that led to that. Because when the factors were in control for the 11 team, he led 292 laps. He was the class of the field. And I think at one point he'd led all but 6 laps through the first maybe 3/4 of the race before the green flag pit stops. But Denny Hamlin and the 11 team just looked stronger than ever. And what a great thing to motivate you too. If you've never won a championship, you've set your new bar at about 67 wins. That's what we're going with.
Oh, I saw what you did there.
Yeah. So nothing to quite motivate you like all the losses and heartbreak he's had to go through over the last 6 or so months. And I don't know, Tyler, we talk about it every year. It seems like a broken record, but Denny Hamlin and the 11 team just look as good as ever. And I remember Denny saying on his podcast earlier this year too, that there's just something about this data and analytical era of the sport where, yes, everyone has access to what they do, but he has access to all the other teams as well. And he's a very analytical person, likes to break things down. Kind of reminds me of like a Tom Brady, like how everything's going to be picked apart very scrupulously. And it seems like that is the case with Hamlin. And this era of the next gen and this era of data and data sharing is only benefiting them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I feel like I'm not taking anything away from what Chase did to get the victory here. And he's having a very good point year, 249 points, 4th in points. But I feel like right now, at least a few races in, this feels like a 3-horse race for this championship right now. I think Tyler Reddick is clearly the driver to beat, Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin. Like if you're looking at those 3 right now, I think if you're Denny Hamlin, you got to be saying to yourself, compared to the 45, actually, we run better at a more diverse number of tracks than the 45 does. Even though there's a significant points gap and the 45 has 4 wins. Like, Tyler Reddick, and I know this sounds even laughable to say, Tyler Reddick finished 15th at Martinsville. He was just a non-factor. And Denny was right there, So, like, you got to be feeling like, hey, we can, even though we're way back at points from them and don't have the wins that they do, potentially the 11 team can actually win at more tracks and can run more consistent than the 45 can. And then Ryan Blaney's run very good all year. Um, we've seen the Ford camp have a lot of speed. I think they're a factor. But right now, I think that early on, it looks like those three, and then it's everybody else after that.
And we were right. I guess the true test was going to see how he would run at Martinsville at Bristol here in a couple of weeks with in regards to Tyler Reddick, because the short tracks just have not been his strong suit. Richmond's been okay to Tyler Reddick over the years, but Martinsville, for him to qualify eighth, I have to say, Tyler, I was very impressed with the qualifying effort there from Tyler Reddick, because we just don't see Reddick in the 45 team up front, but they're only going to get better. Just like I feel like we've seen Denny Hamlin get a little bit better on the road courses, and those tend to be his Achilles heel in this next gen era. But maybe that gap's closing up for each of those drivers in those respective categories. But another name I want to bring up to you too. I was just so impressed because you were riding him so much last year, and I was kind of getting on that train. And Mike Joy said the same thing. We went from when is Ty Gibbs going to win? Is he ever going to win? To when is he going to win? And it seems like that 54 team has just shown up this year with so much speed, and maybe with something to prove at this point in juncture.
Yes, I will give Ty Gibbs credit. He has had, what is it, five, six straight top six finishes to open up the season.
Yeah.
Or I'd say, they've been running really good. But we've seen Ty Gibbs have these flashes in the past before. Maybe not like this, but we've seen him run up front in the past, and then he gets in a lull of sorts. What I wonder, Dom, I think this will tell us a lot. In the next few weeks, what is more likely to happen? That Ty Gibbs falls off, or does he punch through and get to victory lane? I think for that team's sake and for momentum, they need to get to victory lane soon. Because if they don't, then I could see that fall off happening again. I think that they need, for their own pride and their own confidence, they need to push through, have a breakthrough, and get to victory lane and show that they're a serious contender, a serious threat here.
And maybe Bristol's the next opportunity for that to happen. We'll talk about way later in the show. But the last time we made the trip to Bristol, Ty Gibbs led the most laps, and he's done that twice in his career, Tyler, where he's gone out and led the most laps but didn't score a victory, and just some odd numbers to kind of follow on that. You look at the list of drivers who have never won a Cup race, and among the active drivers, he's the top of the list with laps led to have never won a Cup race. But he's closing on a record. I don't think he'd want to be necessarily proud to hope. Mike Skinner, friend of the show, was not happy to find out that he has the record for the most laps led without a Cup win. And maybe there's some comparisons there where Skinner was in really good equipment for a few years and just had races that didn't go his way at the end. And I feel like we've seen that with Ty Gibbs a couple of times in the Cup Series. But Gibbs, with his 800 plus laps led, has shown he can run up front, but can he finish when it counts? And you're right. For his sake, for the team's sake, they need that.
Yes. And then, okay, taking it a step further. I know this sounds like a simple question, but I think it's reality here. Who is Ty Gibbs? Okay, if he does get into victory lane, do we all of a sudden have to consider him a threat and a contender? Or are there more victories to come? They always say, the first one's the hardest. Or is he one of these guys that's a one-off driver, like just gets wins every now and then here and there? Like I'm very curious, and I don't know the answer to that question at this point in time, but I do wonder that, like, is it just a breakthrough that needs to happen to open up the floodgates, or is it going to be that he's, not going to be there consistently?
And it makes you wonder. And I want to ask you this question. If we get to the end of the year, Gibbs makes the chase, makes the playoffs. Let's even throw in some bones here. Let's say he has double-digit top fives, which is hard to do, especially in this era. Double-digit top fives, close to 20 top 10, something you would see where a guy's like fourth or fifth in points, leads several hundred laps, but doesn't get to victory lane. What does that set up long term? Because that's his fourth year now in Cup that he would have not won a race, leads a ton of laps, now has this record that he passes Mike Skinner on, finishes top 5, top 10 in points without a victory. I mean, what point do we get to a breaking point, I guess, is where I'm getting at.
And that's a difficult question to answer. It's a good question, but it's a difficult one to answer because of the circumstance of the team and the family and all. If if Ty Gibbs raced for Hendrick Motorsports, he would already be out of a ride by now. If Ty Gibbs raced for Team Penske, he'd be out of a ride right now. But it's his grandfather's team. I think they're going to give him every benefit of the doubt, every opportunity to try to make this thing work. And if he makes the playoff, finishes top 10 in points, and doesn't get a victory, I would still think he's going to be back next year. Um, but if there is a fall off and he barely makes the playoff, or has a lot of DNFs, then I think those questions have to be asked. But another thing I would point to is that right now Gibbs doesn't have really another option out there at this point. They've benefited greatly over the years from Toyota's farm system. But the top driver in that camp right now is Corey Heim, and his rights belong to 2311. And I know that Legacy Motor Club is going to be a three-car team next year. Somebody's going to fill that ride. And they're still trying to figure out how they're going to replace Denny Hamlin in a couple of years from right now. If you get rid of Ty Gibbs, sure, in theory, you could improve and find another driver, but there's just not an obvious option right now.
Not at all. And yeah, I feel like he's in it for the long haul. And when you look at grandsons and grandfathers that own teams, I think he's leaps and bounds ahead of where the Dillon brothers are. Nothing against Ty and Austin. Austin's won in Cup, but we don't see the consistency that we've seen out of Gibbs. And I would add, too, that if he was at Gibbs and his last name was Yaley, he would have been yanked a long, long
Yep.
time ago, as we saw in 2007. I think Yaley was onto something, and they just didn't give it enough time. But they're going to give Ty all the time he needs. But I
I
think
wouldn't
shout
say
out to
they
everybody.
gave it enough time when they got the chance to hire Kyle Busch.
That too. That too. If Kyle Busch hadn't been available on the market, Yaley's not winning eight races in 2008, but Yaley would have
If
probably
if
gotten through
if
to
prime
victory
Kyle
lane.
Busch is available on the market right now, Ty Gibbs actually might be out of that ride.
Which would be very, very fascinating. Set up a homecoming of sorts and maybe like a swan song send off for Kyle Busch to
Yeah, this
finish the
version of
career,
Kyle Busch is not replacing Ty Gibbs right now.
especially the way he's running. No, 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 no. But yeah, there. Who do you have? There's no options. Taylor Gray. Taylor Gray has won one race in the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series, so it's gonna be a while. I think before they have a better system set up because it seemed like they had the pipeline figured out, but there's competition now with the other two Toyota teams.
Yeah. How about Bubba and Carson getting into it? Bubba apologized, owned it, said it was a racing incident. Carson wasn't too happy about it. I've seen the replay a couple times. I don't think Bubba meant anything by it on purpose. But I'll say this too. With the way Carson races, Dom, he's he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt. Like in these type of ordeals, um, you know, something might happen where a guy like Bubba is not going to be extra careful or something like, if I hit Carson, I'm not going to feel bad about it. Like that type of thing. Like it's something where I do believe Bubba, but at the same time, like I go back to Carson, like this is what he's setting himself up for by the way he races, and I like the way he races. Don't get me wrong, but that's just a consequence you have to deal with too.
The reputation is going to carry you. And you think back to Atlanta, you think back to Atlanta last year, you think just all the incidents on the racetrack throughout the time he's been a NASCAR Cup Series driver. He's rubbed some fenders and rubbed people the wrong way. And people are race car drivers, we know, Tyler, have very long term memories. So benefit of the doubt's probably not going to be given. There's a lot of respect that's got to be earned. And plus, same boat as Tigers, he's got to win a race. I think for some more respect to be thrown his way to win a cup race straight up, which we've seen Carson Hocevar very capable of doing that. The Coke 600 last year, a few weeks later at Michigan, where he was one of the fastest cars and led laps on speed on green flag runs on arguably the hardest tracks to do that of full-time teams on the mile and a half and 2 mile tracks. But got to get to victory lane. You want to erase some of that, and you want to earn some more of that respect back from your competitors and get more of that benefit of the doubt. You got to get to victory lane.
No question about it. And Bubba. he started out the year hot. He was running really good. He was second in points right there behind his teammate. And now we're talking about two bad runs the last 2 weeks, 34th at Darlington, 36th at Martinsville here. Um, I mean, what what the heck happened to Bubba? I mean, things were going so good, and then two straight just bad finishes for him. This season, what looked like Bubba was right there has been a major fall off for him.
Yeah, two really bad weeks with points, and he was leading the competition in stage points. I believe through was it Las Vegas or Phoenix? He had been up front a lot and collecting points, and it had really propelled him to that early top 5 points position. So he's been able to fall back on some of that. If there's any driver that was really looking forward to an off week, I'm sure it was the 23 camp, because what a horrible 2 weeks to go from second in points to, okay, now we're kind of on evil or even footing with everybody else. So yeah, it's a much needed break for the 23 team. Bristol's been okay to 2311 racing, and Bubba Wallace in particular, more so than Tyler Reddick. But mile and a halfs are coming up. We'll see if that speed continues. I wonder too, Tyler, do we see a fall off from the 23 team? Because we've seen fast starts from Bubba Wallace, but can they keep the momentum going? Can they win a race earlier in the year? Because the earliest we've seen Bubba Wallace ever win a race was last year at Indianapolis in July. And that's already almost time for the chase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if if Tyler Reddick continues to win races and run up front, I think that puts the pressure on the 23 team. We know that Riley Herbst is a non-factor. Let's just call it like it is. Um, but they believe me, 2311 wants Bubba to run up front too, and they're giving him the exact same resources they're giving Tyler Reddick. And if he can't get it done and get a win sooner than later, while Tyler, assuming that Tyler Reddick continues to do his thing, I don't think that's going to be a good look at all for Bubba and that 23 team.
What if we get to a point, Tyler, where Reddick's won, say, 5 races, 6 races? We're halfway through the regular season, and Bubba Wallace is still winless. I don't think Wallace is in a contract year, right? So that's not an issue, but there's just going to be more talk, and it's just more and more of a distraction and outside noise that doesn't need to be there. But a win will fix a lot. But your teammates already got a big head start on you, so how do you combat that? I think.
Yeah, it's a great point. Let's get to our headlines, the news and notes of the plenty to discuss, Dom. Where do we want to start?
So many directions we can go. We could go look at Bristol odds, which we're going to get to here in a second. We could look at Max Verstappen potentially coming to NASCAR. Man, I so many cool things that we could look at this week. But let's go ahead and take a look at the NASCAR Hall of Fame nomination list. So this Sunday, ahead of the Cookout 400, the Mike Helton, NASCAR, revealed on NASCAR, Fox NASCAR's pre-race show ahead of the Darlington race, the 15 names that are finalists for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So the way NASCAR does the Hall of Fame, if you are unfamiliar, they pick 3 drivers every year, two from the modern era ballot, which we consider the modern era of NASCAR 1970s on, or the pioneer ballot, somebody from the early days, as well as the landmark award, which is given out, not necessarily a Hall of Fame induction at all, but it is a award that is given out to individuals who have made their mark in the sport in one way or the other. Maybe it wasn't behind the wheel, but maybe a promoter, maybe somebody in the office, that sort of thing. On your modern era ballot, friend of the show, longtime friend of the show on that as well, Greg Biffle on the ballot. Neil Bonnet, Tim Brewer, Jeff Burton, Randy Dorton, Ray Elder, Ernie Elliott making his first stop on the NASCAR Hall of Fame nomination list, as well as Kevin Harvick, too. Randy LaJoie, Jack Sprague, and on the Pioneer ballot, Ray Fox, Harry Hyde moves from the modern era to the Pioneer ballot, Banjo Matthews, Herb Nabb, Larry Phillips, and then for the Landmark Award, you have Alvin Hawkins, Lisa France Kennedy, Dr. Joseph Mattioli, Les Richer, and T. Wayne Robertson.
So let's start with the nominees, and then we can get to the overarching discussion that's been a big topic this week when it comes to Hall of
Yes,
Fame. Um,
that's
First off with the nominees, the only thing I know for certain is Kevin Harvick. I think that's a lock. That should be unanimous. Like Kevin Harvick, amazing Cup career, champion, Xfinity titles, or O'Reilly, whatever you want to call it. Like that should be that should be easy, right? Kevin Harvick, like first ballot, that should be unanimous. There should no one should be opposed to Kevin Harvick being a Hall of Famer. So
But
we're
Jimmy
good,
Johnson didn't even get in unanimously, so that wouldn't shock you,
which was
man.
BS. He should have.
Yes, I agree with you.
Same with Jeff Gordon. He should have too. Yes. I don't prescribe to this theory, Dom, that, well, so and so wasn't unanimous, so this person shouldn't be unanimous. No, that just means they got it wrong. That person should have been unanimous. Kevin Harvick, in the discussion, should be Hall of Famer no matter what. Then you go to the next group. Okay. We get past Kevin Harvick. Maybe Greg, I don't know. Like I don't have a for certain feel. I'm not as bullish on the second entry of the modern era as I am with Kevin Harvick at the first spot.
I feel like Greg Biffle will get that nod because he was so close last year. Him and Jeff Burton, I think, had the next most votes. And we have recency bias as human beings. That's just something I think is part of many of our DNA.
People
And I
aren't going
think
to
that's
admit this, but I think his passing actually kind of helps him in the sense that it puts him more in people's state of mind.
exactly. So
That's
Biffle and
not a knock. Don't take that the wrong way, folks.
no, of
I'm
course
just
not.
being
No,
real.
I don't think that's a knock at all. I think with what has happened over the last few months, the Biffle name is just going to be at the forefront of that. So I think Harvick and Biffle, in my opinion, are the shoo-ins. The Pioneer ballot's going to be interesting because Harry Hyde's been on that ballot a long time. Larry Phillips. I would say Phillips at this time, Tyler, would probably get the nod. And I feel like that's the social media versus the panel is completely different. But I feel like the consensus I have seen on social media, Larry Phillips is going to get that nod. And Harry Hyde worked with Bobby Isaac, worked with Jeff Bodine, worked with many great names. Tim Richmond won a lot of races, won the 70 championship, but Larry Phillips has hundreds of wins at the local level. And I think that's a great segue into the other part of this conversation. It's not a NASCAR Hall of Wins. It's not a NASCAR Hall of Cup Series. It's a NASCAR Hall of Fame. And Phillips getting that nod, I think, would just cement that more.
So here's what I look at it. Okay. And I use this example when it comes to any Hall of Fame in any sport. The question that I raise, whether we're talking the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, NASCAR Hall of Fame, can you tell the story of that individual in that sports story? And to me, that to me is the litmus test of sorts. And I agree with you that it is not the NASCAR Cup Series Hall of Fame. It is the NASCAR Hall of Fame. But at the same time, like, okay, if you here, I'm throwing all these thoughts out there. Stay with me, folks. Okay, the NASCAR Cup Series is the premier institution. That's the biggest accomplishments are achieved there, and the by far the most valuable is what happens there. To me, Dom, like if we're going to anoint these guys based on what they did in lower series, the O'Reilly series, Truck Series, Whelen Modifieds, ARCA, whatever it is, you have to do something incredibly significant, something out of this world, where we're even having that conversation for you to be a part of. And to me, like, as we're looking at, in that, we'll get to the Justin Allgaier stuff in a moment. But as far as like that, when we talk about these pioneer guys that are being talked about, do you see that? Do you see somebody there that you say, yeah, what they did, maybe it wasn't in the Cup Series, but it was significant and it changed the sport? Do you see that with any of those guys?
Man, when you put it that way, because I agree with you. My brother's always said the same thing too. Can you tell that industry's story without that person? And when you look at that pioneer ballot, like Harry Hyde and his impact in the prehistoric days, prehistoric, that's not the right word, but the pre-modern era of NASCAR. And when you look at the other names, Larry Phillips, local legend short track racer, and how NASCAR was in its infancy. And it's all these people that help grow the sport too, because that's why we see truck guys. We've seen Xfinity guys, or that's $5 in the jar. No, no NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts drivers in the ballot too, and in engine builders, because it's not just the drivers, it's not just the
Right.
people behind the wheel that make the sport it is. It's so many moving parts and pieces, and like on one hand, of course, I'd love to see. I've made it very clear. I would love to see Jeffrey Bodine in the NASCAR Hall of Fame someday. But I get why there's an Ernie Elliott on the ballot. Randy Dorton, 9-time NASCAR champion as an engine builder. How can you ignore that? Had a big missing piece of the puzzle piece there when you're talking about putting a championship together for Hendrick Motorsports. So no, it's not just the NASCAR Cup Series Hall of Fame. There are so many levels to this that make it work. The Wheel and Modified Tour, Richie Evans getting in is class 2012, 2013. And that was very early in the NASCAR Hall of Fame's days. So it's nice that NASCAR doesn't forget its past. But again, now the personal side of me, I'm a little salty Jeff Bodine's not on the list, because even the Wheel and Modified wins. The Hendrick Motorsports story. Hendrick Motorsports doesn't exist if he finishes second to Bobby Allison at that Martinsville race in 1984. You cannot
Allegedly.
tell NASCAR story without Jeff Bodine.
Allegedly. That's one of those myths that I'm like, okay, sure, they would have shut the whole thing down. Right, right.
I
That's
believe
what
it,
they
man.
tell us.
We're putting that book together, and Jeff talking about they pretty much had to make the case to Mr. H, like, let us go one more week, and especially Harry Hyde. Like, man, Jeff knows how to run that place. He's won in modifieds. Hendrick had overspent his budget for 84. So they really were about to shut down. I don't know, man. I think there is more to that. It does sound like a fairy tale, but sometimes reality scripts better things than what Hollywood can.
Now the Justin Allgaier discussion that's been a big topic this week. So Dale Jr. brought this to our attention, making the case for his own driver. And let me say this: I don't blame Dale at all for promoting Justin. Justin's been very loyal to him. He has been a great driver for him in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and he's running some of the best racing of his career right now in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series for Junior Motorsports. With the way he started this year, he's won a championship. He's done all that. But the discussion was Dale Jr. said, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. And I'm like, whoa. Hold the phone a second. Justin Allgaier's a Hall of Famer here? Justin Allgaier? You mean the same Justin Allgaier that tried the Cup Series and didn't make it and has been a career O'Reilly Auto Parts driver ever since? Look, I like Justin Allgaier, but how many guys there's at least 35 drivers right now that could do exactly what Justin Allgaier is doing in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. He is not doing something that's earth-shattering, that's changing the sport. And we've seen guys come up through the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series that beat Justin Allgaier time and time again, and now they're in the Cup Series that outran him. So, like, Justin's had a fine career in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. I could say the same for guys like Matt Crafton and others, but that's not a Hall of Fame career. Like, you were a merchant in a lower tier series. That's not a Hall of Fame career. I mean, no. I agree with Denny Hamlin. I disagree with Dale Earnhardt Jr. Guys like Justin Allgaier, the Matt Craftons of the world. It's okay to be in the Hall of Good or to say you had a good career, but that doesn't mean you are Hall of Fame worthy. I would not put Justin Allgaier in the Hall of Fame whatsoever.
It's to be seen. If there's a second title one, I think that maybe makes him a little more worthy of the conversation. Because you look at Sam Ard. Sam Ard's a pioneer of NASCAR. He made one Cup Series start. And like what we've been saying with this overarching theme, it's not the NASCAR Cup Hall of Fame. And if Allgaier makes a great, consistent career, which he already has in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, a multi-championship storied career, I think makes that conversation a little more wholesome. You could make the argument Matt Crafton someday. 3-time champion, 15 wins. I know it was a very sporadic career, but he did make a career out of it. And Ron Hornaday paved the way for somebody like Matt Crafton to make it into the Hall of Fame someday. And that's why we're seeing Randy LaJoie on this list. Like, again, what I talked about the last few minutes. So,
but how many guys could have
sword.
done the exact same thing if they would have just said, yep, I'm not going to the Cup Series. I'm going to stay down here and do this.
But the point is, at the end of the day, they did prove it. They did win. They won races. They won championships. And that can't be discounted.
Yes, it can.
I don't know. It's the NASCAR Hall of Fame, baby. It's not the NASCAR Cup Series Hall of
No,
Fame.
no, no. It can be discounted because they did not, because how many drivers could have done the exact same thing?
Doing and actually following through are two different things, though.
Uh, I mean, so you expect those guys to pass on an opportunity to go cup racing?
Everyone's circumstance is different. I think Justin Allgaier said that today or earlier this week when an interview with Steven Toronto that, yeah, he could go cup racing, but I think for some, and I don't know. I don't know. Every driver's situation is going to be different. Let's be honest with ourselves here. There's probably some guys in cup that are there, not because they can't win, but it's maybe part of that ego thing that they want to be cup guys. And there's some that want to win, and there's some that are willing to step down to other series. And there's some that are willing not to do that. Everyone's on their own career trajectory, but at the end of the day, the winners should be rewarded. The ones who make an impact on the sport should be rewarded. Justin Allgaier has made impacts off the racetrack, too, not just as a champion of the sport, but one of the more recognizable figures. I'm sure Allgaier is more recognizable than some cup guys. Not all cup guys, but some
Sure,
cup
but
guys.
he's not done anything special. He's not done anything that is earth shattering. Like go set the. I'll tell you what, Justin, you want to make the Hall of Fame? Go set the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series wins record. Then we can talk. That would be. Go break some records. Go do something that hasn't been done before. I've seen this from other drivers. There's nothing that Justin Allgaier's done that hasn't been done already.
He's the most popular driver in that series for a reason, and fans look up to him. That cannot be discredited either, because it's not just the Hall of Stats. There's all the impacts that these people make. That has to.
We
be
already talked about Kyle Larson saying the voting's rigged.
Maybe the cup discussion, that's something else. But Allgaier has been the
I mean, when you've been there that long, I would hope you were the most popular.
Maybe it makes for fun debate. But yeah, there are certainly a lot more worthy people at this point in time. But Justin Allgaier, when his racing helmet is hung up and he makes that Hall of Fame shortlist ballot and the nomination ballot, it won't surprise me.
He will not be getting my vote. Not if he's. I'll tell you this: if he sets the O'Reilly Auto Parts wins record, we can have a discussion.
He's way off on that. That's at 60 wins away.
Yeah, exactly. He's got ways to go. If he can get there, we can have a discussion. But right now, no. There's not a
what
spot
about
in the
50
Hall of Fame.
wins? He's at 31. Would 50 open that conversation for you?
At 31 right now, get to 50. Maybe we can talk. But the only way I'm guaranteeing him in, go set the wins record.
Not a second championship.
No.
What if he got a third championship and holds that record of the most titles in that series?
No.
Real okay. You've really set a high bar for him.
Yes. Do something significant. Do some make history, make significant history. And I like Justin, but that's not Hall of Fame. That's no. In fact, I would even go a step further. I think we're letting too many people in the Hall of Fame, to be honest. I would change the voting criteria where you have to reach a certain percentage of the vote to be considered. Like, I hate that we have 3 guaranteed spots every year. Like, if only one person makes a Hall of Fame one year, that's fine. Only 2, maybe some years we justify 4 or 5 going in. But this idea that 3 get guaranteed every year, it's ridiculous. You're watering down the Hall of Fame.
No, I think they actually made it a little more exclusive when they didn't do a class in 2022, and it went from 5 to 3, and it's stayed a consistent 3. The NFL does what, 7 a year? Grant's a bigger league, but
no, I like the idea of you got to get a percentage of the vote.
that might be the way to do it. I got to ask you while we're on the topic, Jeff Bodine, does he make it in the Hall of Fame in our lifetime?
So this is where it sucks because there's politics involved. It sounds like, from my understanding, and I'm not a Hall of Fame voter, Dominic isn't either, that the politicking has not been there for Jeff to make the Hall of Fame. Like, you had a great book that you wrote, obviously. He's named one of the 50 greatest drivers of all time, 75 greatest drivers of all time. I think he should be in. I do. But, like, I don't know what it's going to take. If there's going to need to be a more aggressive campaign, if he's going to have to wait till he's on the Pioneer ballot someday, like, that's what sucks about this, just like anything else, the politics involved. Like, and maybe Jeff needs to go out there on a media tour saying, I deserve to be in the Hall of Fame or something, and go make his case, as crappy as that sounds. But like that to me is the problem there. What I think needs to happen, like for Jeff to get in, if we're talking the politics involved, is somebody like Rick Hendrick, maybe it's Dale Earnhardt Jr., somebody like on his behalf that has, some leverage or something like needs to politic for him. And from my understanding, like he hasn't had that loud voice in his corner. Like the Pro Football Hall of Fame, one of the things that they do is that there is a presentation, there is a case to be made why this person should be in the Hall of Fame, their story to be told like that. Um, like Jeff needs that just to even get on the ballot, and I don't think him doing that enough. I think he's going to need some help to get that.
He's never been on the ballot. I think that's been more of a shock for me. I think the fact that we've never seen his name cross the ballot, because when you look at the Cup guys that have made the ballot, that it's about the same stat lines. Harry Gant, 18 wins. Neil Bonnett's been a finalist a few times at 18 wins. Jeff Burton, 21 wins. Ricky Rudd, 23. So in that same category, he's a Daytona 500 champion. But I just look back to, again, what you have said, what my brother has said. Can you tell that story, or the industry story rather, without that person? And you can't without Jeff Bodine and Hendrick Motorsports and what Hendrick Motorsports has meant to NASCAR over the last 40 years. And plus the modified wins too from a local level. There's just, you can make the case, I think, for somebody like Jeffrey Bodine.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. What else we got?
Well, this is certainly fascinating. Another Hall of Fame driver in another category, Max Verstappen, Formula One driver. Not too happy with Formula One right now, Tyler. And there have been talks over the years about getting Max in a NASCAR vehicle, even having a little feud there with Kyle Larson. But the possibility of seeing Max in a NASCAR Cup Series ride or a NASCAR ride in general is someone that is very fascinating and entertaining to look at. There was another podcast, and I'm forgetting the name, but they were talking about too about what it would take for him to run Indianapolis. It would probably be about like $100 million because he has no interest in running IndyCar or the Indianapolis 500. But the idea of Max running in a NASCAR race is fascinating because we've seen Formula One crossover and Formula One world champions run in some NASCAR races in the next gen era. Jacques Villeneuve, Jenson Button come to mind as immediate names there, Tyler. Max Verstappen to NASCAR. What are the odds?
I think it's greater than people think. Um, will we ever see Max Verstappen full time in a NASCAR Cup car? Not. Um, I guess never say never though. But to give kind of perspective on this, people know the backstory a bit. So F1 introduced a new car this year. From my understanding, most people hate it. That it's awful. The comparison I've seen has been when NASCAR switched the COT to give you an idea just how bad it is. And Max and all these others are sounding off about it, and Max's performance has slipped up a bit. He's still running very good, but not to his standard, of a four-time champion. And so he's considering leaving and talking retirement. He's only like 30 years old. And so then at that point, like, you start to look at other options. And he's made it very known he's not comfortable with the idea of running ovals, a little too risky. And I understand that. He's run road courses his entire life. But, folks, this is a guy that's been running NASCAR trucks at Talladega on iRacing for years. He's always had some interest in NASCAR. We've seen Brad Keselowski raise his hand and say, the moment Max Verstappen wants to run NASCAR, there's a Ford Mustang available for him at RFK Racing. We know about the Project 91 car that Trackhouse has, bringing international talent, and already the connections with Red Bull going on there. Dale Jr. just this past week came out publicly and said that he would love to see Max in NASCAR. Kevin Harvick saying the same thing. The door is open. If Max wants to do a one-off race, hell, if he decided he wanted to run 36 races, it could happen for Max in NASCAR. I'll say this, like, Dom, I don't see Max Verstappen hopping into an NASCAR Cup car as early as next season. But he's still very young. He's 30 years old. We've seen Juan Pablo Montoya, Jacques Villeneuve. Jenson Button, like all these guys. Some of them when they were a little bit older, try out NASCAR. Like realistically, let's say that Max Verstappen's done in F1 this year, and I think I've heard rumblings about him maybe doing some GP racing or maybe even some sports cars or something, IMSA or something like that. Like maybe it's not next year, but I would put a good amount of money down that sometime in the next 5, 10 years we see him run at least one NASCAR Cup race. I think it's going to happen. We're running Coda, which is a place he's won at in F1 many times before. Got the San Diego Street Course now, Watkins Glen, Sonoma, and those are just the Cup opportunities. Trucks are running street courses now, and all this. Like, I would, Dom, I don't know about you, I would be surprised if at some point, even if it's just one start, one time, we don't see Max Verstappen at some point.
And can you imagine the eyeballs? People would be very interested when that happens. And I'd like to see Kyle Larson and Max Verstappen shake hands. I would love to see what that looks. To my knowledge, I don't think they've ever met. So that would be really cool to see how that interaction goes too. But always cool when you see some crossover, especially from world champion drivers from other disciplines that want to come over and run some NASCAR. And like the most recent Project 91 driver too with Helio Castroneves last year in Daytona, it can happen. And maybe there's a fear to overcome with those ovals, but it would probably likely be at a road course where you see Max run somewhere, some point in time. It does happen. I think that it's a fascinating thing to think about. It makes for great conversation, good water cooler talk. Hopefully it does happen someday soon.
Do you think it does happen? Like, I don't expect it to happen next year, but at some point, I think it's even if it's just a one-off start. I would be surprised if we don't see him in a Cup car one time. It might be even 10 years from now, but I would be shocked if it doesn't happen at least once.
He's got options too. If he wanted to run Coda next year, Keselowski would put him in an RFK car. There would be competition from Trackhouse to put him in the 91 car. There would be plenty of team owners that would love to have an opportunity to have somebody like that drive their vehicle at an F1 track as well too.
I think that I don't know if it's a significant ratings bump, but I think it would take the world by storm. Like, oh, Max Verstappen's getting in a Cup car. Like that, it would. I don't know how many more eyeballs necessarily, but the social media attention, the buzz around it would be there for Max, and it would be a great opportunity. I would think that Trackhouse probably seems the most likely. I think Brad and others, not even just Brad, would make a significant push, but Trackhouse seems to make the most sense.
Especially since they've had a track record of doing it. Now RFK's done stuff like where they've had Joey Hand in the car, but the 91 team seems to be the ones. And RCR has a history of doing that too with Will Brown. But yeah, Trackhouse would be the leading candidate. And
the Red Bull connection too.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Like the Trackhouse pathways there.
Yeah, I think so. What else?
Looking at this week too with Bristol the
Oh,
following week, however, Rockingham
ah,
and Corey LaJoie and Daniel Dye. What were we going to say?
Daniel Dye. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Daniel Dye reinstated by NASCAR, but has parted ways with Kaulig Racing. Corey LaJoie will be taking the reins of the number 10 truck starting this upcoming weekend at Rockingham. And for the rest of the NASCAR Camping World Track or Craftsman Truck Series campaign, there's another $5 in the jar there for you. But Corey LaJoie getting another chance to go full-time racing. No word at this time if he will be given a waiver. What the point situation is, he's made 2 starts in trucks this year, but to my knowledge was not collecting points in the truck series. Sets up a fascinating opportunity to see what will happen in Ram's first year back in the truck series. You have Corey LaJoie back behind the wheel of the 10, and Daniel Dye looking for another opportunity with his next chapter after being indefinitely suspended and coming back.
Yeah. Let's start with Corey LaJoie for a moment here. Season's far enough along. He's not going to compete for the playoff of it or for the chase. That's out the window. But if you're Corey, I think the biggest thing that's been lacking for him is getting to victory lane. Like, and Ram with Kaulig, like the resources are there, and he's a big enough name. I think if you're Corey, like, sure, you're not competing for a championship, but I think this is a golden opportunity. I'd be surprised if Corey doesn't get into victory lane, and if he doesn't, honestly, I think that's an indictment on him.
He's got a great opportunity to do it. This is a guy that correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler did not want to go truck racing a few years back, and here he is going truck racing for a flagship team with Dodge and Ram and Stellantis. So you don't get to victory lane now, man. Like, what are we doing? Now, granted, it's a first year team, and the Ram notebook's not deep. Justin Haley's not running as strong as we would have thought. Granted, just a few races in, but you have a full season now, and I wouldn't be surprised, just more as a formality, Tyler. We do see Corey LaJoie and Kaulig Racing apply for a waiver. That's NASCAR's discretion if they're going to give that or not, based on the circumstances. But owners' points championship is probably what you're going to be competing for, and Corey probably knows that too going into this weekend's race.
Yeah, I think so. As far as Daniel Dye goes, um, made a mistake. We're all human, you know. He got reinstated pretty quick. That's one of the fastest reinstatements I've ever seen for this type of ordeal. Um, I would put it this way, Dom. Like I would think he's going to get a second chance at some point. He's a young guy, you know. He's got talent, but like I don't necessarily feel bad for him because like that was it was just dumb. Whether you agreed with it or not, or whatever it may be, like what do we talk about all the time? It's yes, you have freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequence. He didn't get in trouble with the government for what he said. Like to me, like I don't feel bad for him, but I would be surprised if he doesn't get another opportunity somewhere down the line. Maybe it's not in the next few weeks or something, but I would think that somewhere he comes back up.
Yeah, and I think Matt was saying too, he did bring some funding with him to Kaulig, so that funding is going to probably go with him wherever he ends up next.
As
So
long
he's
as he
not
still
going to
has
get
it.
much. Yeah, as long as he still has it. So I don't think we're done seeing the likes of Daniel Dye in the Truck Series, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, maybe even a Cup Series start down the road some of the day. That might be a while and a ways away, but Daniel Dye is not done. It's just a matter of okay, where's the next opportunity? Where's it going to line up, and what's the calculated move here?
Yeah, exactly. All right. What do we got next?
We're looking ahead to Bristol. Well, we got Rockingham this weekend. Got the Truck and O'Reilly Auto Parts Series there, and of course Bristol the following week. Man, odds are not out yet for the Bristol race, so we can't even go over
And,
that this
and
week.
I'm not here next week, but I still need to give a pick.
Yeah, so who's going to win at Bristol?
So with no odds and no laps run on track, let's just throw a dart against the wall here at this point. Um, Dom, I picked this guy a couple weeks ago. Didn't get the job done for me. I think that win's coming soon. He's won at this track before. He's got history there. Toyota's been fast. Christopher Bell at Bristol is who I like this upcoming week.
I love it. You sound like when we had David on the show many times, and we'd hear Kevin Harvick every week. Kevin Harvick, he's won
Yes.
there before. Kevin Harvick's going to get it done. Christopher Bell's going to get it done then.
He's still running good. He's just not winning races right now.
Yeah, we're like a fifth to seventh place race car right now, and Bristol would be the opportunity. He won the Bristol race there in the fall, so that notebook there has got to be really, really good and some natural momentum going into the Easter break. So, yeah, Tyler,
Yeah.
inform us. Where are you going next week? What's going to keep you out of the show?
So I'm off to Indianapolis. Not 500 or the Brickyard 400. I will be at the Final Four this weekend. My first trip to Indianapolis. I am hoping to venture out to Indianapolis Motor Speedway and kiss the bricks at some point while I'm there, though. So that is on the docket. That's on the agenda of sorts. But that's where I will be. And unfortunately, my flight home is at the time we normally tape this show. So you and Matt and company will hold things down while I'm out next week. I'm sure you guys will do a great job and have a lot of fun with that. Rockingham, though, Dom, I like this for trucks and the O'Reilly series. I know some people are clamoring for it to come back and Cup and all this. From my understanding, I've never been out there, but from my understanding, like the facilities there aren't great. Like when you talk bathrooms and suites and all that, like it's not up to snuff for Cup level right now. I believe they just sold recently to a new ownership group. I think it's the Hot Rod Association or something bought it. Um, I think in its current form, Dom, I like it being a standalone O'Reilly and Truck Weekend, especially when Cup is off like this. To me, I think that's a great opportunity for them, and Cletus, of course, getting that chance, and all that. Like to me, that's fine. Like I'm open to the possibility of them having a Cup race down the line, but I think personally they got a ton of work to do to get to that point.
Be a while, but maybe we do see Rockingham return with the Cup Series at some point, like how North Wilkesboro. Who would have had that on their bingo card 10 years ago?
And
So
they had to do a ton of work to do that.
they did. They did. So Rockingham maybe a little ways off, but it could happen at some point down the road. But great weekend for doubleheader action there with Truck and the O'Reilly Series. And I believe the ARCA East is out there this weekend too. So no shortage of racing, just no Cup guys this weekend. In fact, NASCAR's history of Easter and racing on Easter has been kind of hit or miss. We were doing it for a little bit, but it had been kind of sporadic throughout the years. Early days, you saw a lot of NASCAR Cup Series races on Easter Sunday, but honestly, it's really nice. I think that we have that as a weekend off. I'm glad it's not a rolling tradition.
Yeah, they tried to do the Easter spectacular at Bristol Dirt, and they had an Easter service with Chris Tomlin involved and others, and it just didn't hit. They tried to make that a tradition and just didn't resonate with folks like they thought it would. But nonetheless, Dom, what are you doing for Easter weekend here?
Spending it here with the family and Grants, and gonna spend it with extended family as well. Have some Easter egg hunts too, I'm sure, at some point. How about you? What do you guys do for Easter?
Well, that's a good question. My family will be getting together. I will not be with them. But we are hoping to find a church to go to while I'm in Indianapolis and enjoy myself. That's an off day of Final Four weekend. And then, just kind of enjoy the rest of the day from there and have a nice meal somewhere. Eating out. Hopefully, something is open on Easter Sunday. So we'll see about that. We do have some guests joining us in the upcoming future. Hopefully, they don't cancel on us. Shout out our friend Kyle McFadden.
Kyle Stevens.
Kyle Stevens, yes.
Yeah, McFadden's never been on the show. We got to get McFadden on here at some point. But
Oh, wrong Kyle. Yeah.
yeah. You and McFadden, I think, have met, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, the next couple of weeks we've got some great high-powered guests. Aaron Ferrier, the name may not be familiar to many in the NASCAR community, but he's very much known throughout the NASCAR garage, as well as A-lister celebrities, as a NASCAR photographer, a celebrity photographer, also a friend of ours, Tyler. He's somebody we've known over the last few years, so it'll be very fascinating to hear what he has to say with the sport. And then if you're on X, if you're on social media, you see a lot of the Bonecos de Bruno. I think I'm saying that right. He is the comic, the artist, the illustrator that does a lot of the cartoons. It's the Monday or Tuesday after the Cup race and has a lot of fun stuff with that. It kind of changes the names of the sponsors on the vehicles. We'll throw it back to some yesteryear stuff in there too, along the present day stuff with the races. So some really cool guests over the next couple of weeks. And I can tell you too that Bruno is across the pond in Europe. So it'll be a very late taping for him. That'll be a lot of fun to have him as well. So two great guests that are confirmed over the next couple of weeks.
Looking forward to it. We'll put the checkered flag out on this edition of Let's Go Racing. Subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit the like button. We certainly would appreciate it. Follow us on social media on all platforms. Check out the Studio Soapbox Network, this show, the Jones Report, on all podcast platforms. Check out our continuing NASCAR coverage, NASCARRoundtable.com, theracingexperts.com as well. And we appreciate you all joining us. For Dominic Aragon, Matt Kemp, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. It's been another edition of the Racing Roundtable. We'll see you next week.